Welcome to RICO 12. My name is Justin, and I am a child of an all-powerful and all-loving God and a recovering addict, and am blessed to be the host of this meeting and podcast. RICO 12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addictions of all kinds, and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are walking this same path. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to gain tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. Speakers from our past meetings have represented so many fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, and we look forward to continuing to add to the diversity of speakers and backgrounds. Today's speaker for the 167th meeting is Irvin S., who will be speaking on the power of a growing faith. Irvin's story so far. We will get to his talk and the Q&A afterwards in just a minute. First, for a little bit of business. The RICO 12 family of recovery resources continues to grow and have more and more resources for the addict and the loved ones of those addicted. We also have RICO 12 Shares, which is a ongoing shares-only meeting that you can access via podcast 24 hours a day, and you can record your own shares there. We're really excited about that one. We're also having a big book roundtable discussion that's coming up and starting in July. It'll be a weekly 30-minute dive into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous from cover to page 164, from opening cover to page 164. And we're excited about that. We will also be doing another amazing project on real-life recovery information and solutions as found in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous in regards to real-world recovery and life problems. Your donations and subscriptions are making this all possible, as there are costs to build and maintain all of them. On that note, RICO 12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our 12th step in this manner. We gratefully accept one-time contributions through PayPal and Venmo through the links that I'll have in the chat and in the show notes of the podcast. We also offer a monthly subscription program called RICO 12 Spearheads. To join in and help support these really cool projects, please consider donating at www.rico12.com/support and click on the link in the chat or the show notes of the podcast. We look forward each meeting to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in each of us, the listening audience. Now I'll introduce our guest speaker for today, Irvin S. Irvin is a recovering addict to lust who has fallen in love with the results of the steps of AA and SAL, which is his primary fellowship. Irvin S. is a husband and father of two who finds strength in submitting to his higher power. Take it away, Irvin. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Justin. Excuse me. First of all, I'm really honored to be here and have the opportunity to share a little bit of my story and how I've lived the steps. So yeah, Justin, I'm going to talk about the power of a growing faith. And I'll go ahead and get started with my personal experience with lust addiction so far. My experience started when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. I found a naked woman card laying in the backyard of school, and I kept it. I kept it because it made me feel good. It made me disconnect from the things that were going on in my life at the moment, which is that my parents would argue all the time, and it felt good to escape and stare at that card in isolation for a minute. After that, me and my friends growing up, we used to share images in whatever media we could find, CDs, DVDs. Eventually, the internet got a little bit better, and we used to share things on the internet. I was still trying to share things with friends, and then my older brother, got a computer, and he had what I thought at the time were really good videos. That the same thing, it would just make me feel good to watch them in isolation. Eventually, I ended up losing my friends. Right, I remember vividly losing my best friend to the addiction because I only used his friendship, this is looking back, to obtain things that would lead me to benefit myself, whether it was in the addiction or whatever else. I was selfish and dishonest. And those aren't attributes to maintain any good relationships. Going from there, I moved to the United States, and you can only imagine the level of isolation, becoming to a country you've never been before and being culture shock going into college. I had no friends. I couldn't make any friends. And it was difficult. It was difficult. And I continued to do the only thing I knew that made me feel better, right? To numb and cope. Was to continue to watch and isolate in pornography. Somehow I managed to get married and I thought I was going to stop. I thought, I'm getting married. I can live whatever fantasy it is that I'm watching. I can live that. Turns out, Justin, that objectification didn't fix my problem. What happened next is that she found out eventually of my addiction, and what did my addict brain do at that point? Just continue to do it, continue to lie about it, and continue to do it. To her, though, finding out about my addiction was, as she describes it, is cheating. To her, it wasn't just the lying and the isolation; it was the complete destruction of our trust. Right? It was cheating to her. It was cheating. And so I continued to do it anyway. I was lusting anytime I could, watching anytime I could. And if I wasn't watching, I was thinking about it. I was living in fantasy, never living in the moment, never living in the real life. It got to the point, me and my wife, she asked me for a divorce. And to give you a perspective, she must have been 7 or 8 months pregnant at the time that she asked for a divorce. So you can only imagine the frustration and the pain that she had to go through to decide that she was better off without her husband, even if she was 8 months, 7 months pregnant. And what did I do, Justin? I blamed her because I was weak. I was weak, dishonest, selfish, full of pride. So I blame her for all the bad things that were happening to me. She managed to continue to be by my side for a little bit longer and invited me. She gave me the links to join the group. It was the SAL group. That's still my group. The Sunday nights, I still go to that group. I love it. So I went there because I had always been in control, right? I was the leader. I was always in control. I was the king of my life. I didn't submit to anything. I was just doing what I wanted to do all the time. I knew better. So I joined the group just to prove that I can beat lust. This is nothing. I'm join the group and show these guys. About 9 months in white knuckling, I have no sponsor. 9 months white knuckling, lust got me where it wanted me. And it got me wanting more. I wasn't watching and I wasn't masturbating or anything, but it got me where I wanted. Eventually that led me, bad sleep, still a weak heart, dishonesty led me to start watching things that weren't per se pornography, but I was just lying to myself. I was chasing lust. Then boom, act out. Now, the difference about this acting out this time was that I came forward. I came forward to disclose it to my wife, first to my wife, and eventually to other human beings, but first to her. I had never disclosed this stuff to her. She always had to find out. And just in this day, I wept. I wept pretty good. And I wept because I had always been in control, right? My entire life. Why can't I beat lust? I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. So my entire future just collapsed in front of me. It's a new thing I don't know how to beat. I can't do it alone. Somehow I managed to, within the same week, I managed to go back to the rooms and get a sponsor this time. I called the guy that I had my eyes on for a while, and I said, hey, can you be my sponsor? I need and want what you have. Can you show me the path? And that was a big difference. Later on, we had a conversation that really did change my life forever. Every time I talked to my sponsor, an SAL, he would, especially at the beginning, he would redirect me to my higher power. Show me that that's the connection I needed to make. And he would show me. He would show me step by step what that looked like. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what it looked like to pray when you were in a difficult moment and surrendering, abandoning negative emotions. Another thing that my sponsor showed me that really made a difference in my life right away was to clear up whatever definition it is that I had about my higher power. To me, my higher power, my God, before the steps and before the SAO meetings was that he was punishing, judgmental, and distant. Those were his main three things. That's no good God. Eventually, working with my sponsor, I realized, my new understanding of my higher power is courageous, merciful, loving, forgiving, and kind. Those were the biggest ones. Right? Then this goes on in positive attitudes and character. So now, shortly after getting a sponsor and admitting that I can't do it on my own, I thought things were going to be easier because he figured it out. He's just going to show me. Well, I was very wrong. Things got a lot harder very quickly because now not only all emotions are still hitting me, from all directions. I don't have my coping mechanism of the pornography. I don't have that anymore. I can't go back to lust. But now I did have someone to turn to, which is my sponsor. And he would say, something like, don't look at me, let's look at your higher power. Who is loving them? It's my newly found God. And I would have not found out about him if it wasn't through my sponsor. Just knowing that I can't do it alone. So that's sort of the backstory to really the what I want to share about today is I don't want to call them pillars, but really important things that I have to continue to practice and develop in my recovery as I go. And one of them is to voluntarily face adversity. I call it voluntarily facing fear. And I'll tell you a brief story what that looks like to me today. And if you don't mind frogs and toads, you're gonna find it silly. But here we go anyway. I'm afraid of frogs. I'm very scared of frogs for whatever reason. And I live in Florida. So there are many frogs out there. So every night I would take the trash out, and there'd be plenty of frogs for me to be afraid of. I set it upon myself because my higher power. Let me clarify this. Because my higher power now is forgiving. It's okay for me to be afraid. It's okay for me to not be perfect and make mistakes, right? He loves me anyway. So it's okay for me to be afraid. So I go and set a goal to myself to face every day. I have to take the trash out. No matter how many frogs are out there, I'm going to take the trash out. So what that taught me was it got me very familiar with fear. I know exactly what fear looks like in my body. First of all, it goes to my stomach and my heart rate starts beating real fast. And the first thought that comes to my mind is turn around, go back in the house. That's fear for me. And what that led me to find out is, well, there are plenty of things that I fear. If I feel this emotion getting to me when I'm doing a certain thing, well, that's fear. And I know that I don't have to run away. I got to practice it to this point, maybe a year at least. So I found out about other things I was afraid of. Like I'm afraid of spending money. Same feelings. Goes to my stomach, my heart starts pounding, and I want to run away. It's okay. I don't have to run away. I don't have to run away. I have no idea, Justin, how many arguments I have avoided with my wife alone just because I don't run away anymore. Even if I feel this fear, I don't have to run away. We can go through it. We can go past it. So yeah, that alone, I don't know how much time that has saved in my life and how much that has allowed my relationship with my still current wife to progress. So the other thing I'm afraid of is change. And everything changes, right? But when I have certain plans, I have a list of things I need to do or I want to do. And, somebody that likes to pick at that list is my wife. I get afraid and defensive. I know the feeling. I'm afraid. It's okay. Let's figure this out. Let's make new plans. So the other thing I've learned that was voluntarily facing fear. The other thing I know I need to practice and continue to develop, to continue to grow, is voluntarily resting. Somehow along my recovery, I attached, not along my recovery, along my life, I attached guilt and shame to resting. So for me, resting, sitting and being still wasn't really helping me rest because I feel guilty that there's something else I should be doing. There's something else calling for my attention. So I used to fellowship. Hey guys, how do you rest? I asked a bunch of people in the SAL fellowship, and I got a lot of feedback. Good stuff like the self-care. It's resting for me. Self-care, people would say, or take time for yourself, or I go on walks and I'm grateful while I walk. And it's like all these things put together and prayerfully going over them helped me get to a newer definition. Which, by the way, why is resting in this list? Because resting, my newly found higher power tells me I need to rest on the seventh day of every week. So that's really important to me. So I'll read you a quote that I found very important on rest. This is by Cole Arthur Riley, who says, "Rest is an act of defiance. It's the audacity to face the demands of this world and proclaim we will not be owned." I love that for resting. I kind of shake it a little bit and say that was the end of the quote. I say for myself, yes, rest is an act of defiance that rest is an act of defiance that allows me to say no to all of the worldly things that are attacking my attention and not giving that attention to my higher power. So now rest isn't something to be ashamed of, it's something to be proud of in the good way of pride, because it needs to happen. It's an act of rebellion, right? I have an addict brain. Rebellion is good for me. At least my brain feels like it. So before this definition, resting for me or being still, taking time for myself didn't feel like resting. So prayerfully and through meditation, I asked my higher power, what should I do for resting? What would resting look like for me? And eventually, he showed me the way that it looked like going in nature. That was the first thing, being in nature and not being alone. Like, I want you to go resting, but I want you to take your family with you. You're going to take your entire family to rest. You're going to share that blessing. Because I knew I was going to do a poor job at starting resting. What I did, I couldn't do it every week. We put it in the calendar months in advance. Like 2 months from now, this day is off the charts in the calendar. You can't put anything on here. We're resting. And at the time, I didn't even know what we were going to do. It was just that day, don't put anything in the calendar. Well, that day came, I already knew what we were going to do, and we did that. We went to a wilderness area around here, and we walked, Justin, we walked. And we're grateful to be there. We had no plans. We had nowhere to go. It was fine. It was okay. It taught me to be in the moment. It taught me to let go and to be present. I had no idea what that felt like before that day, Justin. So going through that, it allowed me to use that same emotion, that same feeling, and apply it to more mundane things that happen to me every day, more practical things. Here, this is the office of my house. Here's where I work. I'm from home. As soon as I get out of that door, there's the madness of the family and the kids. As soon as I go out of that door and my kids, it's there wanting to play, Justin, I can use that same feeling that I found of rest and unplug for a moment, be present with them for a minute or two, and then move on. I wasn't able to do that before. I would carry all the burden of everything all the time. I wasn't healthy. The other thing I found very important through the recovery and growing faith is to voluntarily take in responsibility. What that means for me is that I've talked a little bit about this, is that my newly higher power, I don't need to lie to him and to myself anymore because he's not going to punish me. He's actually going to forgive me if I confess what it is I did wrong, and still going to continue to love me. He knows I'm not perfect. So now I'm able to admit the mistakes, whatever mistakes I make or errors or, human nature. But because I can admit it, I can fix them too. That's the power of it. That's the beauty of it. I admit it. Let's fix it. Let's not go through that hardship again. I'll give you a brief example of something that happened recently. This happened this week. I missed an appointment. I forgot a doctor's appointment for my oldest daughter, Maya. She's 3. I forgot. And normally what would happen is, because my wife typically takes care of making appointments for the kids, she started to make the phone call. I was like, you know what? No, stop for a moment. I forgot about that appointment. I'll make that phone call. You continue on with your whatever it is you need to do. So now Justin, she's not only relieved from whatever burden I had just placed on her because of something I did, she can go on and do whatever else it is that she needed to do to continue to live. That's the beauty of taking responsibility. So these examples I'm giving you, this is like everyday life. These are things that happened in my life every day. And that's most of my life, Justin. It's what happens to me every day. If I'm able to align those things with my higher power, then everything's easier. I can tackle harder things and worry about bigger things. So, Irvin, what is the power of a growing faith? Well, for me, it has been waiting for God, being patient. Is to continue to do all these things I just talked about while you wait for God. Because waiting for God is not just sitting and being patient. It's to continue to do these things over and over. When things are okay in my life, it's easy to be patient with my higher power. There's no problem. I can be patient. Now, when things are painful, I'm not sleeping well, I'm late for work, kids are sick, my wife's over there asking me for a divorce, then all of a sudden things are not so easy anymore. It's not so easy to wait for God there. I want to control. I want to go back to that selfishness, keep everything the way I want it. But as tough as things might get, I know that having faith to wait for God, it's what's going to carry me forward. Obviously, thanks to the steps of AA and SAL. Just the last thing I wanna mention is that all these things I talked about the growing power, you give me 5 minutes after this meeting and I'll forget. I go back to the old Irvin if I don't every day make a decision to turn my will over to him, over to the higher power, sometimes multiple times a day. I typically do it in my morning routine in the morning, but sometimes I need to do it multiple times a day, as many times as needed, to go back to patiently waiting for him. Anyway, I'm Irvin. I'll pass. Thank you for letting me share.
Oh, thank you so much, Irving. Loved your share. So many good things. I got a few questions down here, but before I get to these, I want to remind our live audience, if you have questions for Irving, please type them in the Q&A link at the bottom of your Zoom window. Looks like 2 speech bubbles over the top of each other. We'll get to those as we go along here. Irving, I really loved the you talked about the attributes of your higher power. Now you talked about the previous attributes of being like punishing and condemning and just things that just weren't helpful for you. And the first attribute you said with the higher power of your understanding today is courageous. And that's one that I just don't hear very often when people say, hey, this is my God is a courageous God. I don't hear that. Tell me a little bit about why that's important to you. I mean, you talked a little bit about your story with the frogs, but go a little bit deeper with that attribute being so important of God being a courageous God.
Yeah, Justin, I feel like everything, I like to put it on the top because it's really important to me. I feel that, everything begins with that. If I, like, one of the biggest things is, how much truth I can hear, whether it is from myself or from others, how much truth from that feedback I can hear. And if I don't have the courage to even listen to myself and to him, then things aren't going to work out for me. Courageous for me is at the base of everything. And when I'm studying scripture, there is no cowardly God. He's always at the front of everything. You study the story that comes to mind is the story of David and Goliath. The tiny guy against the bigger, obviously, person that's going to win. You still have to trust your God and have the courage to pull forward. And also, a lot of the character defects, like getting angry, resentment, those things, go back to not being courageous. As simple as that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Opportunities.
Good. Thank you, Irving. Love that. All right. Got a question in from our live audience. This is from Monty. Thank you so much. How long has this process been since you started taking recovery seriously?
It's been about a year and a half. Yep.
And I'll follow up on that. In that year and a half, I mean, you've talked about some things, but what are the biggest, or what are some of the less obvious changes that have happened in your life that mean a lot to you in the last year and a half as you've been applying these principles and trying to live by them?
Some of the greatest miracles that I've experienced aren't things that I really was looking for. So first, I had to, get myself aligned with my higher power and let a bunch of things go. And when I was in a bad place, let's call it that, I was dragging my family down. I was dragging them down because I was, being selfish for one is not great. Making people upset around the house, they're not in a positive environment. And because now I'm able to most days be in a positive environment, then it allows them to grow. It allows them to expand their blessings. That has been something that I didn't plan for or think about before the first time recovery, is that how much it affects them in the way that they start producing the better part of themselves.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Irving. All right. You mentioned early on in your share that, in your life, you had always been able to, control the outcome of many things that you had in your life. That, if you just gave enough energy and willpower and time to something, you could beat it. You could manage it. But with addiction, it just didn't work. How did that make you feel to initially say, you know what? I don't got this. After trying so hard for so long to overcome it on your own, what was the emotion when you said, I finally can't do this. I give up. I surrender.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. I mean, I remember feeling just destroyed, defeated. It was painful. It was very painful to admit and to see that, everything that I believed in the past and moving forward into the future wasn't truth. It was very painful to see that. And that's how I felt, man. It was just defeated, beat up by lust.
And with that defeat, did that so sometimes if I feel that way, I'm defeated, I feel hopeless. I feel like, okay, there's no hope. I may as well just die now, because what's the point? Was that how you felt, or was there a light at the end of the tunnel when that defeat was realized?
Yes. And only, I think, looking back, I hadn't thought about that. But yes, looking back, I think because I had already been in the program when that moment arrived. Um, and before joining the program, I had a hard time believing that my addiction was a problem to someone else other than myself. I thought it was just my thing, my problem. And before the program, I had no idea that it was affecting, not no idea, but I didn't care enough that it was affecting others. So in that moment of defeat, there's still something in me that wants to be a good father, a good husband, a good son, a good friend, a good neighbor. There's still something in me that wants those things. The realizing of the defeat was that I didn't know how to do it. That was the bigger part of it. I didn't know how to move forward.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. All right, we have another question from our live audience. This is from Zach. Zach says, "Hey, Irving, I'm struggling with trying to use recovery to fix my life. How do I tell if I'm doing too much in recovery or if I should rest and focus on my own needs?" There you go. What do you think of that, Irving?
Yeah, that's a good question. Uh, it's a tough balance. It's a tough balance. I'll tell you that rest is really, really important because it shows you how to let go. It shows you how to abandon certain feelings or even certain situations, at least for a moment, while you regain composure and then go back and attack it. I know for myself, I wasn't very good at resting for a good while in recovery. But what I was doing for recovery, even if I didn't understand it, was to be of service all the time. Try to be of service, try to be of service, try to be of service, try to be of service. So it's tough. Um, I don't know. I tell you, my higher power tells me every seventh day I need to rest. That's that's what I would recommend to you. If God, if Jesus is your higher power, then that's what He's telling us to do. So even if you're being of service and working in recovery, that seventh day, try to make space for Him and honor Him, because that's the thing. You stop and you don't stop just because you stop because you need to, but you also stop to honor Him. And just doing that, you'll have a bigger relationship or a stronger connection with your higher power that will then allow you to get back out there and tackle recovery again. I'd say don't skip it.
Yeah, thank you, Irving. And one thought I have on that is, yeah, this concept of the Sabbath, of resting on the seventh day, is something that's in several religious traditions as a means to disconnect and reconnect with God, disconnect from the world and reconnect with God. And I've seen, and I can't quote them, but I've seen like studies where disconnecting for a day every, week or every 10 days and just, maybe it's turn off all electronics. Maybe it's something like that is very beneficial. And no matter what the faith tradition may be, no matter what the religious practice is, just taking a day of rest is really beneficial. And that's something that I struggle with personally. I do honor a Sabbath, but man, that day can be busier than anything else. Irving, how do you step back from the busyness of even a Sabbath day and just rest on those days when well, I'm just going to speak for myself, when I feel like I still have a lot of obligations that I need to fulfill? What's your experience with that?
Well, I'm really bad at that, Justin, too. So because I know in advance that I'm going to be really bad, I just plan it way ahead of time. I planned not to have a lot of worldly things on a certain day. And sometimes it doesn't have to be the full day. Sometimes it's just an afternoon where I'm going to be typically in the presence of family, my immediate family, my two kids and my wife, and we go on a nature walk. And then that then gives me the ability to, when we go, say, because you're talking to the guy that going to the beach is a chore. That was a chore for me, going to the beach, because all the things I had to do, I had to, all this packing, and then all the sand and get in the car. And so now, that was me before. Now, going to the beach is about being with my family, disconnecting, being in the moment, being present. That's, I can use that as rest. It's not a chore anymore. So, doing it poorly, it's okay. It eventually, if you continue, you'll get multiple chances to get it right, and that's okay.
Love it. Thank you for digging in a little bit more on that concept of rest. And we've had a few speakers speak on the power of pause, of detaching and getting quiet. And I just love getting all of these different perspectives going towards the same end. Thanks for sharing that. Irving, you mentioned the principle of voluntarily facing fear and adversity. And one of the things that you said there that really intrigued me was, I don't have to run away, and not running away from a fight or an uncomfortable conversation with my wife has actually saved a ton of time and a lot of pain, long-term pain, just by standing up and sitting in that uncomfortable situation for a few minutes. Do you have any, like a specific example that you might be willing to share about how that has happened and how it saved time in the long run?
Yeah, I'm sure I can think of one. This is, more as a generalized example. Well, I'll tell you a bad example. We were on our way to take my daughter to gym class. And I had something I needed to get done. I think it was changing the oil or something like that. We were on our way to take her to gym class. Right after gym class, I drop him off, I take the car, and then I go do a quick oil change. Well, my wife wants to do something in there in between. She wanted to get her eyebrows done or something like that. And to me, immediately was like, no, I need the car. So I'm going to drop you off. I need the car right away. I need to change this oil. And that's what I'm going to do. Pride, selfishness. And, that's what I do. Turns out there's no spot to, there's no spot to take the car. So I can't change the oil anyway. She would have saved me that trip of going to change the oil, or maybe when I would have gone after taking her to her thing, maybe I'd had a spot then. But when I wanted the spot, there wasn't one there, even though I fought it. So, clearly afterwards, I had to hear from her that, if you would have followed me and type thing. So there's all that time wasted, and still because I didn't do what I wanted to do, I feel upset. So it's just a bad situation. Nowadays it's more fluid. You wanna go do your eyebrows, fine, we'll do your eyebrows, and then if we have time, we'll go and change the oil. That's fine. We'll figure, and that's how it has saved me so much time and energy and effort. Not only me, also her, because she doesn't have to go through through my character defects to share a point. I hope that answers your question.
I like that. And I like the imagery of that's also letting go of control. It's not just stepping back from contention or from adversity. It's giving up control. So it's a surrender. It's a facing with courageousness a situation, at the same time surrendering control. I love that dichotomy, that thing there. Okay. Well, Irving, one of the more common questions that comes up in these things is, what does your morning routine look like? How do you connect with God each morning? What does that look like in your life?
Yeah. So I wake up really early before it's madness, before the kids are up and before my wife's up. And I just typically, I make some tea in the morning. I'll tell you exactly what I do. I make some tea in the morning while I'm listening to one of those apps that takes me through a prayer, morning meditation. And the tea kind of becomes a ritual. I'm drinking tea as I'm listening to this. Then I sit here in the office here in the sofa back there. It's kind of dark, so I sit here in darkness and quiet. And when I'm ready, then I start prayer. I do what gets me to that real connection before I do my prayer from the heart is I do step 3 prayer. I go through that. I go do step 7 prayer. I go through that, and then I do the prayer of St. Francis. Those things kind of cure whatever it is that's running wild in my head. I'm giving my will to God. Step 3, step 7. It's okay. The bad things I've done. Today's a new day. Prayer of St. Francis. It just shows me that I can, as we will do it later here in a minute, and people will see if you don't know it. It just balances me. Where there's hatred, I may bring love. Am I being hateful? Am I bringing love? It makes me go through those questions really early in the morning. Then I do my personal prayer from the heart, where I pray for everyone in the family. I pray for those who still suffer, and I pray for myself so that I can obtain, blessings and then share them, not just keep them and get them and enjoy them, but also let them flow through me. After that, I do study, whatever it is I'm studying. And now I'm studying this book by Tony Evans, Kingdom Man. So I do a little bit of study. Then I do a little bit of journaling. And by that time, sometimes the kids are up already and they catch me. But then I'm done with my morning routine. I start my day.
So let me ask this. I love that, by the way. And I love that you said, and my kids are up and they catch me. What do you think it does for them when they catch you doing those types of things rather than if they were to catch you acting in your addiction in the morning? Tell me a little bit about how that may affect future generations.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Justin. It brings up a good point. Amaya, she's 3 and some change, and now she's starting to, ask really good questions and know what's going on. Before, when she was very little, she would just interrupt, and that was it. I gotta stop and I gotta. But now when she's up really early, it's she's gonna go through the study with me if I'm not done. She's gonna go read this paragraph that I'm reading. And I think she likes it. She enjoys the time with daddy, in the quiet and in the morning. And she might not understand the whole idea yet, but she knows I'm talking to God. I'm connecting with this external force that I'm submitting to. That's blessing our lives. So I think it sets a good example. That's a really good point.
Yeah, and I'm gonna sit there for just a minute and riff on that too. I'm pretty selfish with my morning times. I want quiet. I want to be left alone. But what Irving is doing right now, when his daughter catches him, quote, catches him in his morning routine, is he is perpetuating this for maybe generations to come. And what a miracle that is. I can definitely take that and implement it into my day and be more willing to allow disruption when I'm doing my morning routine, or if I'm later in the day, if I'm trying to take a moment and pause because of something, if my daughters or my wife come in, I can invite them in to just sit with me for a minute and experience that. Miracles. These are miracles that affect not just us, but the ripple effect goes out forever. Thank you so much for sharing that, Irving, and allowing me to kind of dig on that for just a minute, because it's meant a lot to me. All right. Before we wrap up here, do you have any words of wisdom for us?
I think we said it all. If something really important that we can't forget, or that I would like to put out there, is that if you're struggling, even if you have been through the steps, is keep coming back to the rooms and start taking action if you haven't already. Get a sponsor, get somebody to help you walk the steps they've worked before. You don't even have to trust. You see it. You see people like Justin, 8 years or some change in recovery. That's enough for you to believe that it can be done. That was huge for me before going into the rooms. How it is that I'm struggling so much, and these guys in these rooms are cracking jokes. What do they have? How do they do it? Keep coming back and ask for help. That's what I would like.
Thank you so much, Irving. Good stuff. That was a great Rico 12 speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. If you have additional questions or have thoughts that you've been inspired by in this conversation, please consider going and joining the WhatsApp community. And you can join that if you haven't already by sending an email to rico12pod@gmail.com. That's RECO12POD@gmail.com. Join that community, ask questions, make comments. Also, record a share on Rico 12 shares if you felt moved by something here. And the link's there in the chat. It's also in the show notes of the podcast. And if you haven't yet rated and reviewed the podcast in Apple Podcasts, please go do so now. It is a great way to work our 12th step in sharing this message with others. I invite the audience to come back next week. Another good friend of mine in recovery, Tom L., who's also a first-time Rico 12 speaker, will be speaking to us on the topic entitled "No Longer Running the Show." And I'm really excited about that. Tom's a good friend of mine and really happy about that. All right, now let's launch off into the rest of our day with the prayer of St. Francis that Irving will say for us.
Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there's hatred, I may bring love, that where there's wrong, I may bring the power of forgiveness, that where there's discord, I may bring harmony, that where there's error, I may bring truth, that where there's doubt, I may bring faith, that where there's despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there's sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds, it is by forgiving that one's forgiven, and it is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Irving. Remember, everybody, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
There was a man put his hand by the side of his mouth, and he wanted to scream, but the sound never came out. So he reached for the bottle to wash the pain away, 'cause what he wanted so badly was to live a different way. And all of his problems and all of his pain filled up the puddle and rose with the rain. His ship kept on sinking to the bottom of the lake, and he knew for certain that he was just a fake, just a fake. Was a man put his hand by the side of his mouth, and he wanted to share, but only lies ever came out. So he reached for the needle to numb the pain inside, and the truth that he yearned for shriveled up and died. And all of his problems and all of his pain filled up the puddle, rose with the rain. Ship kept on sinking, bottom of the lake. He knew for certain that he was just a fake, just a fake. Side of his mouth as he read from the book, only truth spilled out. So he reached for a power to help him through the night, 'cause what lives in the darkness dies in the light. Yeah, what lives in the darkness dies